Hey guys, and welcome to Couch the Mind, clearing the mind one couch talk at a time. On today's episode of Season 2, Episode 14, I've got Phil Anderson, former professional Australian cyclist, joining me today in conversation around the topic of second gear. How's it going, mate?
Yeah, good, Jaden. It's great to have a chat.
Again, really appreciate you giving up some time to go through this topic, and I'm sure a lot of people will get much out of what you have to say today.
Well, thank you. I'm happy to spread the love and give some of my experiences, and we can put it in some kind of context of what life is all about.
That's it, mate. Brilliant. So I guess where I want to start this interview is your upbringing. So you're originally from London, but then moved to Melbourne, Australia, when you were quite young. How come you made the move?
Yes, my mother and father separated and divorced when I was very young, less than 1 year old. So I came back with my older sister, she's a couple of years older, and my mother back to Australia. My mum was Australian, so she was actually a dancer, a ballet dancer, and she was in Europe and fell in love and had this relationship and got married and had my sister and myself. But yeah, after a few years, they found it didn't work out, and so my mother retreated back to her homelands, to Adelaide actually, and so I came back with them. I have no memories of that. My mother never really spoke about my father at all. It's just a part of her life she never really discussed, but we got plenty of love from my mother, and but it wasn't long until she met another man, or a few years, and she remarried, and so my stepfather he brought me up as a father, I guess you'd say, and we went to my sister and I went through good schools, and we moved to Melbourne, went to good schools, and and then grew up in Melbourne, suburban Melbourne. I was a reasonable athlete. I used to do everything that all kids do: play footy, cricket, do the swim sports, athletics in summer. But I'd seem to excel in endurance sports. Running and swimming was okay. And so by the time I got to, to 14, I was already like one of the best runners, the cross-country runners, distance runners in the school I went to in Melbourne. And, I was enjoying that, and, kept going through school. I wasn't great academically. I'd be sort of like getting C's and D's, and subjects which I really was passionate about, I might get a B, or an A would be an exception. But so I wasn't great at school, but I was sort of aiming to go into graphic art or commercial art of some kind when I left school. Back then, now you go to university to do that, but back then it was you go to a tech school, do commercial art. See, I was reasonably good at, in that sort of direction. For me, that was at school, but when I was 16, I saw a bike race. I didn't know anything about bike racing. I didn't have any family in the sport. I didn't know any cyclists. I'd never even seen a bike race. And so one day, but I did like riding my bike. I just had like a 3-speed, and I was riding on a Saturday afternoon with a mate, and we not far from where I lived, and I lived reasonably close to the city of Melbourne, and in Kew, and we were down Kew Boulevard, and we saw a bike race. We just happened to be there, and there was this bike race on, and that really excited me. And I was curious. I asked the guy that was on the corner, with the flag, sort of a marshal,
For sure.
What's going on? What's this bike racing caper? And he explained a little bit. In Melbourne, there was like maybe 8 or 10 clubs, and there's track racing and road racing, and there's BMX as well, which is pretty popular at the time. And he said, if you want to find out more, go down to the local bike shop. They're affiliated with the Hawthorn Club, which is close to where I live. So I went down there to the shop and spoke to the guy behind the counter, and he gave me a brochure. And so before I knew it, I'd not only seen a bike race, but I'd signed up to a club. And and so then it was a matter of putting together a bike and learning as much as I can about this sport. But I didn't have any grandiose dreams of riding anywhere outside of Melbourne or even the club. It was just exciting to see that bike race that time, and it'd be great to be able to ride in closed roads and race like that. But when you read about a lot of the very successful Australian cyclists like Cadell Evans or before him or before me, Mockridge and Sir Hubert Opperman and these guys, the first time they got on their bike, they were just kicking everybody's ass from day one. But for me, it was nothing like that. So, it took me, 3 or 4 years before I really started developing as a potential rider, not even at a professional level. I mean, the next Commonwealth Games, I actually got a gold medal. There every 4 years, so that was joined
1978 at age 19. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So so it was only a few years later. I'd obviously I'd sort of risen reasonably well, but that wasn't. I mean, the Commonwealth Games is not like at the height of the sport, because while there's some great cyclists within the Commonwealth, I really had to go to Europe and to join the ranks of the French and the Italians and that sort of culture.
I must say as well that it's quite refreshing to hear from someone who's done so well in his professional career that you've had to work really hard to get to where you were. You were saying you didn't get on your bike. You weren't brought up in a family of cyclists, and you didn't get on the bike for the first time and you were absolutely whipping people's asses or anything. You had to work really hard for it. And it goes back to that idea of if you've got a passion for something and you want something bad enough, the more work you put into it, the more of a chance you'll be able to achieve whatever you want to achieve.
Yeah, no, a much higher percentage of chance. I mean, it's not, you can just bury yourself trying and trying and trying. You will improve, but it doesn't necessarily mean you'll be the best, but you will improve a lot. And, you normally in the beginning, the improvement is the greatest, but, when you get up to the top end, 1% is a whole lot, a whole bunch. They talk about those 1% as well. When you get to the very top of anything, to improve, it becomes more and more of a challenge. But that was the pathway I took, and it's different now in contemporary times. There's sort of a Victorian Institute of Sport. It doesn't matter what the sport is. It can be athletics or it can be boxing or sailing. There's a different pathway. There was none of that back then. There was no Australian Institute of Sport or anything like that. For me, I had to start off with a club and then get into the Victorian team and then try and, do all these selection races to try and get in the Australian team. And then I went to the Commonwealth Games, did well there. And then I came back and then, somebody was interested in placing me in a club in France. And so that was a real lucky break, So it's different now. It's certainly not easy. It's not harder. It's different pathways riders take now.
I also saw an article online saying that in 1980, when you were being sponsored by Peugeot, this is when you went going professional, of course. After your first two races in your after winning your first two races in your first season, you decided to move to Belgium. And apparently you stated that whilst living in Belgium, it actually hardened you up as a professional athlete and it became a part of your makeup. Do you want to maybe explain why that may be the case?
Yeah, look, when we watch or you think of images of bike racing, you possibly think of, what most people see on the televisions in July when it's sunny weather, it's fantastic conditions, and when you're there, it's just the smell of coconut oil and it's, but unfortunately, and you see the accolades that the riders are getting and the speed and everything like that that the riders are traveling in the mountains, and it's it's picture perfect. But there's a lot of work that it takes for a cyclist to get to that level, and it takes a lot of training, and you have to be hard. You have to be pretty hard to be able to get to that level. And that means, riding in all sorts of conditions, all sorts of temperatures, weather, snow, ice, very, very challenging conditions. And, it'd be very easy to quit and give up and, pack your suitcase and come back to Australia.
Yeah.
But living in Belgium, I found that the people were very friendly there. The weather wasn't all that good. But I believe, going out day after day in the rain and terrible conditions, that did become part of my makeup. And, in a difficult race, if it's raining, at least half the riders are already defeated. They'll be standing on the start line and all they want to do is get off.
Just because of the conditions. Is that correct?
Yeah, just because of the conditions. And, I thought, well, if there's 200 guys standing there, I know the worst they're going to come is 99th, because half of them are already pulled out. Even though they're standing there, I swear, you go, 10 kilometers down the road and a lot of them have already turned around. It's different in tours and multi-day races, but in single-day races, in multi-day races, if you don't finish that day, you can't start the next day. So you can't just pull out like that. But so anyway, I just, it did become part of my character was, just a hard bastard, just being able to withstand those terrible conditions. And, when you're going along on a bike race and you've got hundreds of guys around you and you're just riding, it's just like a river, the water's just coming off the wheel in front of you, just going straight in your face. And, quite often you're out in the country and there's cow shit and everything just get sprayed in your face. It's kind of a bit of a torture, I guess, when you think of it. A bit of washboarding going on, but anyway, I think, if you can, endure those tough times, which I trained in that tough weather, those tough conditions. And, Belgium was good for that.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, where did you, because you're stating that you need to be, you became a bit of a hard bastard through these conditions in Belgium, but what made you, turn the page to be able to change your mindset and be able to work through the tougher environments and, situations versus what you would have been like at the start?
Well, I was fortunate because, I turned pro in 80, and then 81, I did my first Tour de France and I got the yellow jersey. So I had a taste of the success that you can get. I was very lucky. Not many people get that opportunity, especially early in their careers. There's something about, athletes that make that journey, that commitment.
You're kind of stuck on your own demise to get through the tougher times and to continue to motivate your own self rather than have others help you get through, harder times and situations.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you have to be self-motivated, but, I'd seen the sort of, the rainbow, early on in my career. And maybe if I didn't, maybe, I wouldn't have been so eager and so, so inspired to keep pushing on and striving. So,
and I guess, and going back to when in 1981 and 1982, when, you were the first non-European to wear the yellow jersey of Tour de France. First of all, for those listening in who might, be aware of what the significance of the yellow jersey is, would you mind just going into a bit of detail with regards to that? And I guess after that, I wouldn't mind asking you how you felt, especially at such a young age, wearing the yellow jersey.
Yeah, the yellow jersey signifies it's a representative of the rider that has got to that particular point in the race, like in the Tour de France, in the shortest amount of time. So if it's on day one, if you win the first stage, well, you automatically get the yellow jersey on the first stage, okay? But then the next day, there might be two riders in front, like there might be a minute up the road, so the jersey will shift to that rider, the rider that's done it so many minutes shorter than anybody else. So
Yeah.
and that time is accumulative through the event. So every day that is recalculated, and so the rider the next day will wear that jersey, the rider that's done it in the shortest amount of time. Now I still finished 10th in my first tour, so still a good result.
Absolutely brilliant, mate. Especially especially at your age. I think it was 19.
Yeah, I was like 21 or 22 by this time.
That's
I think.
absolutely incredible,
Anyway,
mate.
yeah, really young. Yeah, but yeah, the next year came back and won a stage in Nancy, which is over in the sort of northeast of France, and got the yellow jersey and had the yellow jersey pretty much all the way, 3/4 of the way around the France back to the Pyrenees again, and I lost it there and ended up coming 5th. But it's good. I must have had the jersey for like 10, 11 days, which was great, because the yellow jersey gets a lot of attention, and people just going crazy. This kid from Australia, comes out and knocks the French or the Italians. I mean, even though I was Australia, I mean, they didn't even know where Australia was. When I first got the year before, when I first got the yellow jersey, they couldn't believe it that some kid from a country like Australia could get a yellow jersey.
And going back to the idea of becoming this hard bastard, before all your big races, especially with Tour de France, how did you prepare mentally for such big events? And when you actually did very well, like for example, in your second year of the France, in 1982, when you're stating that you came 5th, to continue to achieve so highly after that, did you feel like there was a bit of pressure, additional pressure added onto that?
Yeah, I mean, I would just put pressure on myself, and I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to look back and go, well, could have I either achieved a win, if I had better support or a better team or whatever. But I think I'd rock up every year to the Tour de France, especially those first 5 years, thinking I could win it, lead a team and give it a good crack.
So what you're saying is, in terms of preparing yourself mentally for these big events, you just went off the fact that if you didn't live up to expectation of what people had pictured you as to be in terms of your, hard bastard attitude, that you felt like you were letting people down. So you just continued to achieve highly and push yourself further and further.
Yeah, look, I believe if you've, physically trained, done your best you can in training, you sort of map your year out, and it comes down to mapping out the races, your training and preparation for those events. So you come to the event, in the best condition possible, and there can only be one winner. So there's going to be, if you've got 200 riders there, like I said, you're going to have 199 losers. so it becomes, and you lose it, you get used to losing. You lose all the time, as a professional athlete, especially when you've got, so many moving parts and so many possibilities of outcomes. It's not like a tennis match, which comes down to two players. On the last day of the Tour de France, anything can still happen. You get seasoned to take those knocks of not winning. On average, I possibly raced maybe 100 days a year. I mean, some years I was racing. Yeah, some of those years I was racing 120 days in a year. So if you win 10 of those races, you had a very good year. My best year, I think I won 16 races, but I think I had a season where I hadn't won one race. So you get, you get seasoned of not winning. You can't win everything. you can't win everything, and it's better to, I never said no to a win. I think there are some riders now who possibly choose are very picky about their wins and say, oh no, I won't even get out of the seat. These guys can win. I've got bigger things to fry down the street, next week or 2 weeks later. But for me, it wasn't like that. If I saw a finishing flag, I gave it a good crack. Sometimes it'd be helping a teammate, which would be fine. But a win's a win, and I took everything I could. But yeah, you get used to not winning, and it's not like the Olympics where you're racing only every 4 years. For me, I get on the plane tonight, flying home after losing a race, and 2 days later, I'm back in another bloody big race. And I've got another opportunity. They can have some long periods of time when you don't win, and it's not very nice when you're on a team and you're the leader and you haven't won and nobody on the team's won, and you've got to go down to breakfast every day and you've got to keep the morale of the riders, you've got to lift the spirit. Because there are tough times, that you go through, and success feeds success, and then one day somebody will win a race, or on the team, or I'll win, and then suddenly there'll be more spirit back in the team, and suddenly you'll start winning again, and the morale's there and the spirit's there and everybody's lifted. And, everybody steps up. But yeah, it's being able to get through those periods, those dry spells when you don't win. Like there are teams out there, which go 6 months without winning a race. It's very tough on those, it's very tough in those situations.
It's a great mindset that you've got there, Phil, because you can probably apply it to many other things in life in general. Like, you work so hard for something, it might not be, especially in the situation that you're in with cycling, but you've got this dream job that you've gone to university, you've done a degree, and you've put all the hard yards in it, and you get there and it's just, it might not be what you're after, or a couple of hurdles are thrown at your way. And what you've got to realize is that without these hurdles, you don't actually grow as a person, and you actually become better at whatever you're trying to achieve through this. And I'm sure for yourself, through some of the hurdles that you've been faced with, and like you said, you race 100 races in a year, and you said that if you win 10, that's a brilliant reward back to yourself. And like if you're losing 90, to be able to just quickly change your mindset and go, you know what, I've got another race in 3 days time, let's prepare for it, let's do the best I can, let's make sure I can try and win, because I know I'm capable of winning. That's an amazing mindset to have, and so many people can surely take a lot out of that.
Yeah, well, I think that's the way that the sport of cycling is, and not everybody's afforded that opportunity, to be able to front up again every 3 days, or 4 days, or sometimes it's day after day. So you have, races like the tour that go for 3 weeks, but you've got races which just go for a week or 3 or 4 days. And you might go into it as race favorite, and then, on the first day you have a bad day and you lose 5 minutes, and you imagine me on the dinner table that night, trying to front up to my teammates who have bloody traveled from all over the world to support me. And, I've got to sit there and try and be cheerful, but not too cheerful. But, it's just days, there's nothing saying that we can't, because that's overall. I've lost 5 minutes, so I can't win overall, but we can still win stages. It's still another 4 days to go. We can win those little stages. We're not going to win overall, but there are accolades in winning those stages.
Yeah, there's certainly, like in, for your instance, much like what you're saying, you might not be able to win the entire race, but there are smaller goals that you can set, which will ultimately make you feel that feeling of success. You feel like you've been able to achieve something. But what I want to go into now is back in 1985 at Saint Etienne, you crashed into fellow opposition rider Hino near the finishing line. He blamed you for this incident, and the reason why I bring this up is because, in terms of the podcast, mental health, and all that, especially being in your 20s. When you get blamed for something, sometimes it can have a bit of an effect on you mentally, especially in your situation. You're a quite big cyclist, and the news would get involved with it, and they'd probably spin it and turn it into whatever they want to do. Did that have an effect on you mentally?
Not really. I mean, it's I didn't really know about the significance of it. I think I got back to my hotel, and the journalists were already there waiting to ask me about it, and they said that this other rider, Bernard Hino, blamed me for him falling off and breaking. He broke his nose when he landed. But I personally knew that wasn't the case, and I wasn't really fussed with them, fussed about it. I think there's possibly an advantage being non-European sometimes, in that I didn't read a lot of the press. This is before the internet, of course. So I didn't read all the reports the next day, or watch the TV, or that. I wasn't really fussed about it. I just had words with him the next day, and told him it wasn't intentional. I mean, I fell as well. I fell over the top of another rider, but I mean, it was poor sportsmanship for him to blame me for it, because it was just a freakish accident, and a bunch of us came down, and he was in the yellow jersey, and I wasn't really in contention for the jersey. His teammate was Greg LeMond, the American, and so I think he was, behind all this. He just thought that that he was going to lose control or lose hold of the yellow jersey. I wasn't really affected by what was written in the press. I wasn't affected by that, and I know people get affected by what they read about themselves in social media, whether it's publicly in the press or just on social media. I just didn't pay attention to that, even anyway, there's it doesn't bother me now, and it never really did.
How do you, because it's easy for you to say this, but for someone who were to look at a comment on Facebook or something, and it's something that's quite negative, and it's targeted towards themselves, how do you actually block off that negative feedback? You're saying that it never affected you at all, but how did you have that mindset where you kind of never took notice of that sort of stuff?
I think you just got to believe in yourself that you're a good person, and you don't always make the right decision, but and I never intended to be a bad person to Bernardino who fell off. It wasn't intentional, and you just got to, if you do the right thing if you do the right things in life, the choices aren't always the correct ones, but you're doing what you believe is the right one. So
Exactly right.
if you take responsibilities for those decisions, then you've done it because you believe in it. So you just have to be a believer.
No, you're exactly right, mate. Like you can't live the path of someone else's life. You've got to do yourself justice and do what you think is right personally. And no one's perfect, but it's about making our own problems rather than have someone else bring them upon yourself. You go through your own journey, and that's how you learn, and that's how you get to a stage where you don't really take notice of what other people have to say about you.
Yeah. I think, if you're going into things knowing that you're going to have to regret it later, well, you wouldn't make that decision. You're making the wrong decision to start with.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So in 1987, mate, you were awarded the Medal of Order in Australia. I mean, it's pretty much the one of the highest achievements you can get. How did that make you feel knowing that? I mean, obviously you have a lot of self-confidence in yourself, and you know that you've got fans backing you and all that sort of stuff. But then to get such a such a prestigious award in Australia, knowing that everyone's backing you, everyone loves to see what you're doing and achieving. How did that make you feel?
no, it's nice to be acknowledged in those, with these, with these things, and I was also in the Sporting Hall of Fame, which is a big thing as well. For me, I just love riding my bike. I would have done it for nothing. Like, to get paid to race your bike around in circles all over the bloody world was fantastic. For me, it was like a fairy tale. For me, I remember that first race I saw around Kew Boulevard in Melbourne, when I was 16. And to think that, here now I'm 63, I'd be still banging around, banging on about how that led to, talking to you. So, things certainly fell my way. I've never taken it for granted. For me, it was, every day was better than the last. And you fall over, you get up and you start, realigning and changing goals and get up and strive on. It's just, for me, it was fantastic. I didn't do it for, AOMs, or I didn't do it for Sporting Hall of Fame recognition or anything like that. I did it because I was passionate about it, and I feel very fortunate to have, had a career of doing something that I was so passionate about, that I don't think many people are in that position.
I think that the passion that one person has for something, and it never dies off. You might not put a lot of, as much time and effort into it, down the track, you'll still always have it. But for yourself, like if for people listening in, if someone had a passion for trying to strive towards something and try and get to that dream job or whatever it may be, do you have any advice for them?
Yeah, for me, I mean, every year I'd set my goals. Where as an athlete, you have to do that. You have to be pretty disciplined. You look at the season, the schedule, and you set your goals, and you sort of strive, and you do what you take steps to reach those goals. You have to adjust your goals sometimes, and sometimes you have to do that mid-race. Sometimes you have to do it mid-season, and it's just a matter of lowering your expectation somewhat, and believe, okay, maybe we can, finish in the top 10 this year or this week. And, when we get to the end of the race, we'll figure out what we're going to do and how we can do better next week or next year or whatever.
Yeah, and I guess the lasting question I want to say to you before we wrap this episode up is, if you had your time again during your professional career, what have you done? Would you have done anything differently?
I don't think so. I think it's, I believe in fate that, it's turned out the way it has, because what you've put into it. And yeah, like I said, for me, I was so excited to get where I did and, to achieve what I did, in a sport which isn't really native to Australia. But no, certainly no regrets. And yeah, it would have been nice to win the Tour de France or win a world championship. But hey, I was so happy to achieve.
That's awesome, mate. Honestly, it's an honor to have you on the show for, sharing your life story. It's honestly, it's quite idolizing to hear your journey of, not particularly having, the genetics of, for cycling, but you worked really hard for it. And it's like the old story of if you work hard for, for something that you really enjoy doing, there's always a potential for it to pay off. And, for you, you've lived your fantasy and it's paid off. So again, mate, I really appreciate you taking up your time.
No worries, Jane. It's a wonderful show you have, and I'll look forward to hearing a few of your podcasts.
Thanks, Phil. You have a great rest of the night, and I'll catch you a bit later, mate.
No worries. Thank you.